two kinds of problems. The first one is printing a table of numbers. The other one will be printing a table of shapes, see, stars and hashes. And we will follow the same idea that we're going to follow for printing a table of numbers. The problem says write a program that reads from the keyboard a positive integer m and generates a triangle of numbers as shown on the right. You must make sure the number entered is positive before making the triangle. So when it says you have to make sure, it means ask the user again if the input is not positive. For example, if m is 6, this is the output, and if m is equal to 7, then we expect the output will be different. So this is just a sample. So we should not build our program according to only this sample. So this just gives us an idea how the output will look like. So let us design the two nested loops to print this table of numbers. So the general structure for the nested loop to print a table of numbers or shape is that you have an outer loop, for loop, which is in blue color, and we have an inner loop which is in red color responsible for printing. We need now to fill the empty parameters for each loop by building first a table, and then from the table we will fill these empty spaces for each loop. Now for row, which is the outer loop, just look at the table, take the values of the first column. So those values in the first column, just put them in the table. So we have 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And now for each row, just look at the numbers printed on the screen. For the first row, the number printed or the numbers printed are 6 up to 1. So 6 is the first value, and look that the numbers are decreasing by 1. So minus 1, and it will reach 1 at the end. For the next one is the same. For the next loop, it will start from 5 and terminates at 1 and decreased in each iteration by 1. Next is 4, decremented by 1 and reaches 1. And we will do the same for the rest. So this is how each loop iterates for each row. Now we will fill the table. Let's go for the blue color loop, which we will take its parameters from this column. It starts from 6, so the initial value of row is 6, and we are using the variable row. So we will use it in the initialize, in the condition, and in the update. Now if you look at the numbers 6, 5, 4, 3, 1, the numbers are decreasing. So if the numbers are decreasing, then we write the code, we write the condition row greater than, and the last number we are reaching is 1, so you write 1. Since each number is decreased by 1, so we write row minus minus. For the inner loop, which is in red color, we have to look in the table for each row. For each line in the table, we have to look at it. This is the initial value for each loop, and this is the update, and this is the last number of each loop. For every iteration of row, the inner loop changes. Okay, so for row 6, the loop starts from 6 to 1, but for row number 5, the loop will be different. It starts from 5 to 1. So how to fill the data now? So we have to look at the first values for each loop. See, they are not stable. They are not the same. They are not fixed. So they are changing. So we have to relate it to row. And if you relate it to row, simply it is equal to row. So the first thing we should do here, we say that column is equal row. Next, we go for the condition. Now for the condition, see now the loop, for each loop, it is decreasing 6 to 1, 5 to 1. And since it is decreasing, then we write column greater than equal to. And now we look at the last value, and look, for each loop, the last value is fixed to 1. So not every loop terminates with different number. So they terminate all by 1. So we put 1. And now for the update, we have to look for the update in each loop, and look also the update is fixed, which is by minus 1. So it will be column minus minus. So here we have finished writing the code. Now we need to run it and see on JGrasp. Now we are in GGrasp. I have copied the code from Microsoft Word, and here we are going to have input. So we will ask the user for input. Remember that we need to read an integer m. So we will ask the user system.out.println, and we will ask how many lines. And we are going to read the number of lines from the same line, and we are going to read m is equal to n dot next int. To check for invalid, we write fm less than or equal to 0. Remember, it says if it is not positive, and if it is not positive, then either negative or equal to 0. Then we have to print a message, system.out.println, and we will say invalid input number of lines should be positive. And here we could stop the program by writing system.exit, and we terminate the program. But this is not a good idea, because every time the user wants to run the program, if it input invalid, it stops and run it again. So we have to make the program again, tell the user to try again. So we will tell the user system.out.println, and we will say try again. So try again for another input. How to do this now? We need to repeat. Now if we leave it like this, first I have to put I put brackets, because we have two statements inside this condition. And then how to repeat? Then by saying while. So here it says how many lines. If the user enter positive number, it will never enter the loop. But if the user gives invalid number, then it will enter the loop, and it will print invalid input, number of lines should be positive, and it says try again. Now for try again, we will put a question mark, and remember, you have to read again, otherwise you will have infinite loop. So to read again, you write m equal n dot next int for reading again. We will run now the program and see if it has errors or not. So it has no error. We will run it and see how the program is running. And how many lines? I will give it first 0. So here it says invalid input, number of lines should be positive, try again. And we will give -3. It will tell me also invalid input. Now if I give it 7, I will give it first 6. And see now the output produced is the one expected for the sample input output. Run it again now, and I will give it another number, like for example 10, and see the output. Again, it's printing 6 to 1. So it's not responding to the number of lines. We need to see why it is giving us that output. See, every time you run the program, it will give you only 6 lines. Even if you give 100, see? It is giving you 6 lines. Why? Because if you look at the number of lines for the outer loop, it starts from 6. So this is why it goes for 6 rows every time we run the program. We have to change this one and put m instead. Now when you run it, now your output will depend on how many lines. So if you write 10, then it will print 10 lines. This solves our problem for the first example.